Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the little bit of delay here. We're just trying to get John on. A couple of technical difficulties with his computer, but hopefully we will be able to resolve those soon. But welcome, everybody, to another episode of Hub Cures. This will be our last Hub Cures prior to the MALSI event, which is taking place on August 20th. I think you will soon get an email inviting you to MALSI. We have decided to make MALSI free thanks to generous sponsors. And that means that there will be no paywall at all for anybody. If you remember prior, we had it free for students and postdocs and entrepreneurs, but there was payment for everybody else. And even as a bonus, we'll be even offering a Hub Cures ticket. Sorry, not a Hub Cures, an Uber Eats coupon for your lunch. And that again is because we have sponsors for Uber Eats. But I hope everybody's had a great week. We have had an eventful week since the last time we saw you on Hub Cures. We've, as you know, Massachusetts continues to lead the world out of the pandemic. Lots of good news coming in on all fronts, on the diagnostics front, on the vaccines front. And then, as we're going to hear from John in a few minutes, also on the therapeutics front, lots of great activity happening from MassBio members. And we also obviously have seen a bit of an uptick in infected COVID-19 infections in Massachusetts. Of course, it's a much smaller uptick than in other parts of the country. I actually just returned from an 8-day trip to Utah with my son and was tested for the first time when I got back, because as you know, you have to quarantine unless you test. And I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to get an antigen test by just waiting in line, walking up. Of course, it did cost. Now that the federal subsidies for testing have ended, it's much harder to find any free testing around here in Massachusetts. But was able to get tested fairly quickly. I might also mention that Mass Tech Transfer Center, both Priya and I, are now part of Mass Ventures, which is another quasi-public state agency. And, Mass Tech Transfer has been around since 2003. Mass Ventures has been around for 40 years. And together, we are going to be focusing on deep tech, both providing the same kind of grants and advice that Mass Tech Transfer Center has always done to academic spinouts, but now we'll be able to even match that with equity funding that Mass Ventures brings to the table. So, we're going to be pretty focused on seed stage investing of deep tech companies with a focus on academic, on the academic front. John Weaver just asked a question about Mass Ventures and life sciences. So Mass Ventures has had this SBIR matching program called START, and have been matching life sciences start companies already. So in a way, they were already broadening into life sciences, but now with the partnership that we have with Mass Life Sciences and the Seed Fund, obviously that's now part of Mass Ventures. And yes, Mass Ventures will be looking at investments, more broadly in deep tech, including in life sciences. So sorry about the technical difficulties, but we hope to get John on. Here he comes. Hey, John, can we hear you? No, we can't hear you. Can we hear you at all? No? Can you hear me though, John? Yeah, he can hear me, but we can't hear him. Oh boy. Let's see while we try to figure this out. Yeah, sorry about this. We've tried signing in and out, but Shelley thinks 3 times a charm. Maybe we could do it once more.
Do I have any sound, Vineet?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Awesome. All right. We're in business.
Okay.
Welcome, John.
Thank you.
So I will do a quick intro, but John has an amazing background and resume. A bit like me, he came out of the tech, entrepreneurial world, just like I did, and sort of moved into the life sciences world. But John, why don't I just hand it over to you, and you can give us your little elevator pitch of your background, and then we can jump into the fireside.
Sure. So like Vineet, I started in tech, and I soon learned that the people in tech, their primary relationship is with technology, and I thought that was very boring. In the early 90s, I met a bunch of scientists running around Kendall Square talking about recombinant DNA and the potential to solve some very complex human health issues. And I came into the industry, took a big leap of faith and a gigantic pay cut, and have been navigating Kendall Square and other parts of the Mass cluster since that time, largely working at startup companies. Some were successful, some were not, and have always volunteered my time for MassBio because I believed in the mission of the organization, and was very honored that they brought me on board 7 years ago to lead innovation services, which is kind of a very unique group. And we basically convene, connect, and catalyze. A lot of our focus is on early stage innovation at the academic medical center and university level. And we have a fantastic early stage mentoring program named Mass Connect. And through our various programs, including academic outreach and engagement, Mass Connect, and Pharma Days, we can source, accelerate, and partner innovation. And we're working on the fun piece as well.
That's fantastic. Just a little background on MassBio. How many industry members you guys have? And then maybe we'll sort of move into how MassBio has sort of pivoted into the pandemic world like everybody else.
Yeah, we currently have 1,300 plus members, and it's been amazing in my career to watch the organization grow from a very small organization. I can remember when there were a couple hundred members and they were all biotech, and right now we have a complete life science ecosystem. So pharma, biotech, device, diagnostic, digital health, CRO, CMOs, and all the associated service providers. So it's been incredible that in the 40 plus year history of biotech in Massachusetts, that we've gone from really a nascent cluster to the top biomedical cluster in the US and arguably the world. So we have developed what I call the Wikipedia of life sciences. Reservoir of talent and knowledge in Massachusetts is unprecedented in the world.
Yeah, and it's more like a oil tanker than a speedboat. But when the pandemic hit, the oil tanker started pivoting pretty quickly, right? What sort of programs did MassBio come up with?
Well, the first one, we partnered with MassMedic and a few other organizations and created the Emergency Supply Hub, where members donated PPE to the Commonwealth, and they then distributed it to the hospitals. And very proud to note that over 500 members donated PPE. So that was a very critical first step, and that was done in a matter of weeks. And now we're looking across the MassBio membership, and there are in excess of 90 member companies who are working on vaccines, therapeutics, or diagnostics. And again, that some of them were involved in infectious disease research before. Many have pivoted to help resolve the issue. And it's very gratifying for me to be a part of MassBio and to see that response.
That's awesome. And just talking about the ecosystem for a second, I know you got your finger on the pulse of all the numbers, but there've been record IPOs. I mean, 2019 was a record in many ways. How does 2020 look?
2020 looks really strong, and even though the pandemic is having a serious impact on the U.S. economy, other sectors, and really the global economy, we've seen record capital inflows into the industry. The IPO market is still strong. I think Massachusetts companies have a third or more of the U.S. Biotech IPOs. We see an incredible level of interest in the Massachusetts cluster at this point in time, and I think we have significant tailwinds behind us. If you look at what the industry has always been focused on, solving unmet medical need, and now this is an opportunity to highlight the strengths of what we do. And I expect that the capital will continue to flow. We have companies that are working on therapies and vaccines that will help us get through this pandemic, but even more broadly, solving unmet medical need. Massachusetts companies are working on nearly 400 different medical indications. So it's very important. And again, you go back to what I call the Wikipedia of life sciences, that we have now created this this place where we can say not only is Boston known as a hub, but Massachusetts is a hub for life sciences.
Yeah, I know that people think of MassBio mostly as a kind of drug, kind of place. But that's not true. You guys are much broader than that. You mentioned earlier medical devices, digital health. And when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that MassBio was also pretty instrumental in the MIT COVID hackathon. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, we were approached by Hacking Medicine, and they wanted to get a COVID-19 hackathon. Freddie Wen, who is leading Hacking Medicine, and his team said, would you help support this hackathon? And we got behind it and brought in some of our Mass Connect mentors and recruited Intel and BARDA, and had two hackathons, which were incredibly successful, highlighted a lot of very interesting innovation, some of which is still in process. And I think we talked about there have been some real interesting companies that have come out of that. And so it shows what happens when you convene and connect the right folks. And that's a lot of what we do. And I use a phrase, convene, connect, and catalyze as a way to describe what MassBio can do. It's very important, convene and connect with intention. And I think the response to the hackathon was phenomenal, and we hope to do some more with MIT going forward.
That's awesome. Now, just sort of tweaking a little bit from COVID to sort of general therapies. Any big stories so far in 2020 out of your member base? New approved drugs, new digital therapies, new financings of note?
Well, I think, in terms of the financing for the first 6 months of 2020, we're at 2 billion plus. I think we're on course to set another record, and we have actually seen after the global economic recession of 2008, 2010, and I know that capital was still flowing during that time. It was very different and maybe a little bit darker, but there has been a continual increase in the amount of funding that's come into Massachusetts. And I think because of this Wikipedia, the deep talent that we have, if you have an idea you want to translate to get to patients, this is a great place because we have this incredible innovation and talent, and through the university system, we have this constant refresh coming in. So I think we've really set Massachusetts apart at this time.
That's really awesome. And, of course, the other source of funding, which was predominantly for basic research, but increasingly is becoming translational, is federal government funding. And Massachusetts has always done well with federal government funding. I mean, we had, the organizers of the RADx program on Hub Cures a few weeks ago. And, that's a program that got turned on overnight. And, $1.5 billion or so, and most of it is being managed, from here in Massachusetts, because we have that kind of base of not just the right kind of infrastructure, but we also have mentors and people who can look at deals and who can look at things, who to give grants to, who can project manage, all the pieces, because it's very complex, right? Diagnostic device or a new diagnostic to the market, or a new therapy, or even digital health, and that complexity, I think, is what we are so good at.
Yeah, and it's something that we've developed over time. And I know if you look at MassBio history, MassBio was started in 1985 by 6 very small biotech companies. None of them had a drug on the market. And they really came together to form the organization to support what was in the nascent field of biotechnology. And those founders included Genzyme, Biogen, Genetics Institute, Integrated Genetics, Damon Biotech, and Biotechnica. And those original 6 members have now grown to over 1,300. But it's amazing to me how many of the folks that are here today running companies can trace their lineage back to those pioneers. So we have created a mechanism companies can create, and even based out of academic research, and then the ideas proliferate. And some of those very small companies grow up into big oak trees, and then they shed acorns. And so you look at Genzyme and Biogen and the number of alumni who are now running companies around the world. And so I think we have to look back into history, and we have to thank the pioneers who really set that environment up that allowed a culture of innovation and a culture of collaboration. And we are reaping the dividends from that now.
Yeah, that's interesting. There is a question about the 90 or so companies out of the MassBio membership that are working on COVID related. Is that list available somewhere, John?
Yeah, it's on our website. So there's a COVID-19 Research Center, and that list is continually updated as long as people tell us that they're working on COVID. But I think the number's over 90 now. Very impressive, and many that people can name. Obviously, Moderna comes to mind, but there's a lot of smaller companies, including, I'm very proud to note, some Mass Connect grads who are working on coronavirus. And I think we're probably missing quite a few, and I happen to note that there are some university initiatives as well. In this summer cycle of Mass Connect PI, we have a special coronavirus COVID-19 cycle for principal investigators working, and we have, I think, 8 PIs from 6 institutions in 4 different states that are working to develop therapeutics, diagnostics. One is working in drug delivery. And I think, again, that response is tremendously gratifying to see that. And if you look at the entire portfolio that the Massachusetts companies are working on, I'm confident in stating that we're going to get some solutions out of that portfolio.
That's fantastic. Here at Healthcare, we sort of had people come on to talk about diagnostics, to talk about PPE, to talk about vaccines. We haven't really touched on therapies in a major way. But maybe you could give us a sense of, how many of these 90 companies are sort of working on therapies, what kind of therapies look promising, any academic spin-outs that look promising in that area?
Yeah, there are a number. I think the focus clearly is on vaccines and diagnostics, and we're seeing that in some of the funding numbers. But there's one in particular, is a Tufts team that's working to repurpose a drug called niclosamide, which is a Bayer drug. It's an antiviral. It's been used over 30 years, very safe profile. It's been used during pregnancy. And the interesting thing about that drug is it was identified as a potential solution in the first SARS outbreak. And then SARS extinguished itself before they could start with the clinical trials. But there's a lot of interesting literature out there that suggests that it could be part of a solution. For me, I look at it as a bridge to a vaccine. And very happy to note that the Tufts team received an NIH grant that's going to fund that clinical trial. And that's only one. And I know that there are others as well. I would say that, again, a lot of the funding is going to the vaccine and diagnostic space rather than therapies. But I'm going to closely follow the niclosamide story and love the Tufts team that's doing it. And I think, again, it's something that we should look at all potential solutions to the coronavirus pandemic. I am very hopeful for a vaccine, as many people are. It's amazing the speed at which Moderna and Pfizer and others have worked. I also know that we may not have a widely distributed vaccine by the end of the year. We could probably have a vaccine candidate, but at the same time, we're starting to see in many states numbers increase in terms of coronavirus and people getting ill, and that creates problems for our healthcare system. And if we had a therapy to address some of the more serious cases, I think it would be a potential bridge to that vaccine era that we hope to get into the end of the year or in 2021.
So that's interesting. Obviously, MassBio as an industry organization, also cares about, the business model of the industry, right? Which is, you invest in R&D, you create proprietary products, and you get, gross margin off the proprietary products, as you sell them. In the case of the Tufts project, I assume that drug is off patent. How would that work if it were brought to market?
Well, I think, that's an interesting question, and I don't know the exact answer to it, but I know that it's not currently sold in the United States because the indications that it's used for are not an issue that we have in the United States. I know the wholesale cost is 24 cents a dose, so it could be very effective to be used on a worldwide basis. And I'm sure that there are other therapeutics out there that deserve to be looked at. This particular one, because of the data, because it was identified during the first SARS outbreak, it's on the WHO essential medicines list. It fits a cost profile to get it widely distributed in that strong safety profile. There's a lot to be said in its favor. And I hope we can highlight some other approaches like niclosamide.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned that, there are many other drugs that possibly could be repurposed. Has anybody done kind of a review? I know there are AI platforms that review these drugs for repurposing. Has anybody done that for COVID? I imagine somebody must have.
I'm sure that there has been some information. Unfortunately, I can't comment on whether there's been some extensive research on it. I know that there's been a lot of information that's promoted various drugs. I think, unfortunately, hydroxychloroquine got the lion's share of the press in a way that kind of overshadowed a lot of the other things. And the focus has been so much on the vaccines and the diagnostics that I think therapeutics hasn't gotten a fair shake in terms of the attention that it deserves. But hopefully, through some of these approaches and the fact that the NIH funded the TUS team was great news, because I think it's a recognition that it's worth a try. And they weren't looking for a lot of money either in terms of the amount that's being spent on COVID-19.
Does it have to be a very large clinical trial? I mean, how many patients are they recruiting?
I didn't see the final design of the trial, but they were looking at a grant of a couple million. So I think it was very reasonable. I think that there is a great potential to run some clinical trials and get some additional data and do it at a level that could develop a proof of concept and lead to a larger trial.
Right. Just sort of switching gears, Mass Connect is such an important program and was being held, at MassBio primarily, right, in the conference rooms there. And then it went online, just like my teaching went online. How's that working out? Is it as effective, do you think? What kind of feedback are you getting?
I think it is effective, and is a mentor since the beginning of the program when Imran created it. So I was one of the original mentors, and I think not having to travel into Cambridge or walking to the MassBio office in some ways is a productivity enhancement. And I think people are used to Zoom and Teams and Google Meets and some of the other technologies that can be used. And so I have not seen any impact on Mass Connect. For me, as a matter of fact, not having to drive into Cambridge and not being stuck in traffic, there were many times when I had to dial into the meetings because I had been stuck in traffic, and that last 2 miles into Cambridge is always the most difficult. And I'm very happy with the way that the programs have run, and the team has done a fantastic job going completely virtual across all of our programs. And we continue to get great feedback. There's been great response, and we've had both in the initial launch of Mass Connect cycles and in the final showcase, we've had great numbers. And to me, that shows the interest.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to getting it back in person at some point.
Well, you guys moved into a new office, right? And
yeah,
part of that, you expanded considerably in space becoming available. And I think you're also getting into the space rental business. That it's sort of happened at the worst time you could think of. How's that coming along?
Well, we have switched MassBio to be virtual. There are people in the office. I'm going in occasionally, and we have 10 to 15 people who go in regularly. And I want to make it clear that MassBio is open for business, albeit in a virtual sense. And in terms of the timing of the hub, we're offering virtual packages, and we've had some companies come in and host meetings there because in their own facility, they cannot socially distance because space is at a premium at Kendall Square and people are really packed into their offices, and we have the space to do that. So we have pivoted. I think that we have to look at the investment in the MassBio hub is a long-term investment. Certainly we heard prior to the pandemic, one of the greatest concerns is there was not enough space, and we had quite a few member companies who were using our office to host meetings. And so I think long term it'll play out, and it will become. We have built a premium conference center where people can host meetings from anywhere from 2 to 200 people.
Yeah, and look, of course, we've also had to pivot to online. The MULSI event, which is the 13th year this year, was all set to happen at the Marriott on June 25th. The MassBio event was supposed to happen over at the Royal Sonesta again, was it? I think usually it happens there. And it was prior to us, right? And you guys made the decision first to push to August, and then we made the decision to push to August, and then I guess both of us have made the decision to go virtual. So,
yeah.
So we have MULSI coming up on August 20th, and then the MassBio annual meeting is on August 27th, if I remember. It's the week after.
The State of Possible conference is August 26th and 27th.
Right. And it's going to be fully virtual.
fully virtual.
Yeah.
But I think, in terms of registration has been strong. There's a lot of interest. We normally hold that conference in March. We had to delay it, but I think the response to moving it to August has been pretty strong, and it's going to be very interesting. The content is fantastic. I'm looking forward to dialing in and participating. For me, it's a way that I can learn. We have a lot of key opinion leaders and subject matter experts who are going to provide this sort of content that people are looking for.
That's fantastic. We'll have a nice audience at Malsey, and I think many of those people will probably come and attend State of the Possible too. So any sort of highlights they should be looking forward to at that event?
Well, I think there are many highlights, and I think it's our big event, and I think people should go out to the website and look at speakers that we're bringing in, and I think that should be the attraction for a lot of folks. And I can say, even for me, having been in the industry over 25 years, I have always developed new contacts at the MassBio annual meeting, or now the State of Possible conference, and I've always learned something.
That's great.
And so I think it's always offered great networking. It's going to be virtual this year, but still the access to those folks, MassBio is in a unique position to do that. And I'm looking forward to the Malsey conference as well. That it's one of the best conferences that I always attend, because myself and my team, we spend so much time in the early stage. So we're kindred spirits that way.
Yes, that's awesome. There's a question about MassBio Ed. I think a lot of people don't know that MassBio has this nonprofit arm, right? MassBio Ed. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, it's our education foundation, and I really want to highlight what they do, because if you look at Massachusetts and why we're the top cluster, we've really created a STEM economy. And since MassBio Ed has been around, Massachusetts is typically ranked #1 in terms of STEM. And I think that's due in no small part to MassBio Ed. And so I think the team there, it's a small team, but very impactful. And they're working to embed current science curriculum in the high schools around the Commonwealth, and that helps with workforce development, help with job forecasting. Overall, the key to this economy is on education and working with the universities, the academic medical centers, the secondary schools, and community colleges. And so that's a very important part of what MassBio has always done.
Yeah. How is MassBio Ed funded?
Pardon?
How is MassBio Ed funded?
Well, they have, MassBio provides some funding, and we share some resources, but MassBio Ed raises money on their own. And so they have their own revenue sources. And I would say that I am a big supporter of MassBio Ed. And myself and my team, we do a lot of work with the team at MassBio Ed. And I think, again, that's what put Massachusetts in such a great position. And I think we need to continue to do that. And just like education in general, I would like to see more money flow in that direction.
That's great. So we're running out of time a little bit, but any sort of last thoughts about MassBio, the local ecosystem, the pandemic, anything?
Well, I think, look at the MassBio website. We have a lot of resources out there if people are interested in staying current. I'm going to make a pitch for Mass Connect. We have a number of Mass Connect programs: Mass Connect PI for Principal Investigator, Mass Connect Digital Health, Mass Connect 2.0. We are always recruiting mentors for all of those programs. So if you have 10 or more years of experience and you're interested in giving back, please contact myself or somebody on the team. we will have a role for you. And I can promise, as one of the original mentors in the Mass Connect program, that it'll offer healthy doses of intellectual stimulation, camaraderie, and also a great amount of fun. And Vineet, you know that because you've been a mentor for a long time.
Yeah, I know. I love mentoring and mentoring. You know, the companies are amazing, and you know, in the end, my passion is for entrepreneurs. I was an entrepreneur for most of my career. I really love entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter whether they're doing digital health or, you know, biotech. Entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs, and you know, it's so much fun being around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about what mentoring can do, a lot of these aspiring entrepreneurs that are coming out of the university setting, they don't have a lot of commercial knowledge, and providing that sort of infusion of commercial DNA really sets them on the right path. And there can be no more satisfying role, I think, in the industry than being a mentor and helping the next generation along. And that's in helping them on their strategy, but also, you know, failing fast and making sure that they avoid the mistakes that have already been made. And when you think about the cluster, there have been many lessons learned. And I think as a mentor, that alone acts as a catalyst. Help them make new mistakes.
That's fantastic. Well, let's wrap up with that. And if you would please stick around for a few minutes, I'm sure there are people who will want to network with you. So John will be available on some of the tables. And Priya, you can pull us onto the tables now. Let's move on to networking.